So since 2022, the PNMA has been working on 3 overarching thematic areas. One was connectivity, which is infrastructure and access, and business model. The second one, digital inclusion through a citizen-centric approach. And the third one on capacity development. So in 2023, the network expanded its analysis and set experiences with implementation of a repository of good practices. Then in 2024, the network has contributed to assist and advocate for the implementation of policy solutions for the key issues previously raised while monitoring ongoing experiences. The plenary session this morning will focus on 2 aspects: the traditional highlights of meaningful access stories, this time with focus on the Arab region, and the role of meaningful access in the proper setup, use, and reporting. Now we have my co-host, that is Giacomo Mazon on my right here, and we also have online moderator Judith here, and we also have Roberto Zambrano, and a special guest that we actually have online, that is Vin Sav. Now, our speakers this morning, we're going to have Saida Safar Karim from Pakistan Telecom Authority. We also have Professor Muhammad Slim Alwini, and the distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering, and Mr. Martin Shepherd, Senior ICT Analyst at the International Telecommunication Union, and Mr. Talan Sultanov, Chair and Co-Founder of the Internet Society ISOC Kazakhstan chapter, and Mr. Bobby Beddy, Content Follow Studios LLC, and Ms. Lena Vitrakin, that's Ambassador at Large for Economic and Digital Diplomacy from Lithuania. I'm going to continue. We're going to hand over to my co-host, which is Giacomo, to continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I use this opportunity to invite the PNMA network members to come in front, because we feel alone with you so far from us. So please, if you can move in front in the first line, it will be better for us. So just to explain how we were supposing to make it work this session. The idea was to have 2 rounds with the speakers here, but some of the speakers asked for more time, so let's say that we will have 3 speakers that will be longer in the first round, and they will be more silent in the second round. And between the 2 rounds of speakers, we will have questions from the audience, because we want to be more interactive as possible during the session. So, a special thanks to Vint, that is with us from very far and very early in the morning, or late in the night, I don't know. And Vint, if you are ready, I will give the floor to you, because you have been in the past the one that have mentioned the importance to conjugate properly the access with the meaningful. So you are here since the very beginning, and I see that also the other speaker remote, Ms. Sied, is with us. Welcome. Thank you. So, Vint, what has changed since the last 2 years in this field?
Well, thank you, first of all, for inviting me to join you this morning. It is indeed early. It's about 1:10 in the morning for me, so I'm starting my day earlier than usual. First, let me bring you greetings from the leadership panel, and thanks for all of your work. The Meaningful Access Policy Network is one of the most important of the activities of the IGF, in my opinion anyway. After all, access that isn't useful can't possibly be meaningful. And the definition of meaningful access changes over time. It depends a lot on the functionality of the network and the capacity and capabilities of the system that people have access to. And so early days of internet dial-up access was considered useful. These days, that would be less so, that we wouldn't be able to do the things that we're literally doing right at this moment. So the definition of meaningful access is going to change over time, and that's why your group needs to persist in its analysis and evaluation. There are many words that I associate with meaningful access. I think of safety, I think of security, I think of utility, I think of affordability, I think of reliability, and there are many other words that I'm sure you have all used from time to time. The real question is, can we measure this in some way? And yesterday I had the opportunity to spend time with the UNESCO team. As some of you will know, they have developed something called that they call Internet Universality Indicators, IUIs. They started with a rather elaborate collection of metrics. They have telescoped this down to a smaller number to make it a little easier for people to actually do measurement. It's important for us to find ways of actually measuring how well we are doing, how well are we achieving meaningful access. And that's one of the reasons that the PNMA is such an important activity. It's something that goes on during the course of the year. And as I said earlier, over the course of time, the metrics for meaningful access will change depending on the capabilities of the system. I'd like to overemphasize the point about accessibility in the sense of accommodating people who have various disabilities that might make it difficult for them to make use of the internet. I'd like to observe that at this very moment, I am making use of an automatic captioning system using the Chrome browser from Google so that I can see what people are saying. And of course, we have online sign language interpretation, as you can see on the screen. I want to thank our hosts in Saudi Arabia for arranging for all of these accessibility improving techniques. So I want to overemphasize the importance of accessibility so that all people are accommodated. The last point I'd like to make is that from the leadership panel is that we are relaying a message to the United Nations, to the Secretary General and to the Undersecretary of DESA, that we believe that the Internet Governance Forum should persist beyond the World Summit on the Information Society Plus 20. This operation has been going on for 19 years. By the time the June meeting in Norway comes in 2025, we will have been around for 20 years. Our work is not done. Our work continues to be extremely important, and I believe that we should persist beyond the WSIS Plus 20 time marker. More important, I think your work must persist. And among the things that the Internet Governance Forum can do is to continually evaluate Internet's utility around the world. I'd like to see an increasing amount of interaction between the annual IGF meeting, the policy networks, and the dynamic coalitions, and the national and regional Internet Governance Forums that have popped up almost, I would say, automatically, like mushrooms after a spring rain, without benefit of specific UN support, but evidence of a great deal of interest around the world in the internet and its utility. So I will stop there and thank you for this opportunity to intervene and congratulate you on this session in the 2024 IGF. I have to leave in about 15 minutes, but I will stay here as long as I can before I get to the next meeting. So back to you, Roberto.
Thank you very much, Vin. Yes, you are quite right. Our work is not done, and we're going to continuously to ensure that we close this gap. We're going to move over to Professor Mohammed Slim Alouni, who's a distinguished professor of electrical and computer engineering, to tell us, and also the chair of the education on Connected at the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, so that you can take the floor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Giacomo, for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to share with the audience some of the work we are doing at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in this general area of Connect the Unconnected. So, as mentioned, I am professor of electrical and computer engineering at KAUST. It's a university that is on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, 1 hour drive north of the city of Jeddah. And my area of expertise is wireless communication. And of course, when we talk about wireless, we talk about these days about beyond 5G and 6G, and a lot of the research community is focusing on how to send information at faster speeds, lower latencies, how to densify the network, in the sense increase number of connected IoT device. But there is another important aspect that 6G is recognizing. 6G is expected to be deployed in the early 2030s, is this digital divide that we need to kind of mitigate. And those of you who were here yesterday, there was this interesting opening remark by Ms. Dorina, the Secretary General of ITU, where she reminded us that we still live in a world where 1/3 of the population is unconnected or underconnected. Of course, this is affecting mostly least developed countries, but it does affect also rural areas, low-income neighborhood in more developed countries. So in KAUST, we established a UNESCO chair on focusing on Connect the Unconnected. The idea is to develop technologies that can be, let's say, easier to deploy from an accessibility, from an affordability perspective, to bring more people online. One of the technologies we are pursuing is non-terrestrial network, how we can bring connectivity from the sky. And a few weeks ago, we had a big event here in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, in collaboration with ITU and CST being the Commission of Space and telecommunication technology here in Saudi Arabia, looking at different approach to connect people via satellite or high-altitude platform stations. But what I would like to focus on today, on one of our example of research activities, is how to capitalize on unlicensed spectrum or spectrum sharing techniques. One of the main issue behind the cost of connectivity is spectrum licensing, which of course is needed, and that's what makes the whole, let's say, system sustainable from a business perspective. It works very well in a highly dense populated environment and in kind of area with a relatively good income, but it may sometimes make connectivity not affordable in low-income neighborhood or in rural areas. So one of the projects that we worked on is a project where we brought connectivity to a relatively low-income neighborhood in terms of a worker camp. It was a project co-funded by our university and Meta, and was done in collaboration with the Saudi Commission of Communication Space Technologies, and we have a video showing this project, and I think that will give you an idea on how unlicensed spectrum, Wi-Fi, millimeter wave, free space optic can be used to connect some of the unconnected. So maybe we can play the video.
Can we have the video, please?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. معكم فهد القرشي، طالب دكتوراه في جامعة الملك عبد الله للعلوم والتقنية. تقدم جامعة الملك عبد الله حرما فريدا من نوعه، حيث انه مدينة ليس لها حدود للتجارب وثقافة تدفع للابتكار. انه حرم جامعي ذكي يتميز بالتعليم والتعلم والمعيشة المبتكرة. ويوجد خارج هذه الجامعة قرية ثول بمجتمعها الفريد المتنوع من السكان، وتقاسم الجامعة شاطئ البحر الأحمر من جانب والكثبان الرملية من الجانب الآخر. تلعب جامعة الملك عبد الله دورا رئيسيا في تطوير ثول من البنية التحتية إلى العمليات البحرية والمدارس والمساجد. يوجد هناك شركة ماك، هي شركة إنشاءات وصيانة سعودية 100%. تملك شركة ماك مجمعا في ثول يضم أكثر من 3000 شخص من الذكور والإناث الذين يعملون بجد لدعم العمليات اليومية وأنشطة الصيانة في جامعة الملك عبد الله. من خلال هذا المشروع النموذجي بجامعة كاوست بقيادة مختبر نظرية الاتصالات Communication Theory Lab، وجدنا أن مجمع ماك هو أرض خصبة ومثالية لتوسيع الاختبارات بجامعة الملك عبد الله وتوصيل الإنترنت إلى القرية المجاورة لها. مما يتيح أيضا عمل الأبحاث واختبار الأجهزة المتقدمة في مجال الاتصالات، وبالشراكة مع كاوس سمارت وكاوس آي تي نتورك اند كوميونيكيشن وماك. شرع الفريق في هذا المشروع التجريبي الذي يتضمن ربط مبنى الاتصالات في جامعة الملك عبد الله ومجمع ماك باتصالات هجينة من الليزر والمليمتر ويف، وباستخدام تقنية الانتجريتد اكسس باك هول ونشر نقاط وصول واي فاي عالية السرعة مخفضة التكلفة داخل معسكر ماك، وبالتعاون مع ميتا باستخدام التيليغراف انتجريتد اكسس باك هول، ومع الهيئة السعودية للاتصالات والفضاء والتكنولوجيا CST. يمثل هذا المشروع التجريبي نموذجا لكيفية استخدام طيف الترددات العالية غير المرخصة بشكل فعال للاتصال بشكل موثوق وبأسلوب سهل في المواقع النائية. إنها خطوة إلى الأمام في سد الفجوة الرقمية Digital Divide وتوصيل الغير متصلين أو Connecting the Unconnected and Underconnected.
Yes, everywhere in town we can connect, and the speed is very excellent everywhere there. You can connect everywhere in our town.
Yeah, so far it's okay. It's working fine out when you are outside the country.
So, just in conclusion, the same paradigm has been used actually to connect also one island in the Red Sea. As you know, there is quite a bit of development on the Red Sea, on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, with many construction sites. Some of the islands are 15, 19 kilometers away. It's very expensive to connect them, especially when they are still in a construction mode via fiber optic or undersea cables. And the same approach using free space optic, analysis spectrum, plus maybe Wi-Fi access point at the receiver end can bring connectivity to this construction site. And finally, I would like also to mention the very strong connection between this kind of work and another very important aspect was highlighted yesterday in the opening remarks is resilience. Those of us who live in a very well-connected environment, we tend to forget that this connectivity can be lost overnight due to any kind of natural disaster, and investing in this kind of technology would allow us to deploy these kind of network on demand when needed, when we are subject to these kind of disasters. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zalduini. We see here that a very, I would say strange, but it's not the right word, but unusual cooperation between the university and the territory in which it operates that seems to me very interesting, that and is a model that could be eventually replicated elsewhere. So very, very interesting example, and thank you for this. Now we remain in the Asia region, but we move a little bit eastern, and we go to Pakistan. We have with us Ms. Syeda Shafaq Karim, that is director of the Pakistan Telecom Authority in charge of wireless. And the experience that you will present us concerns gender, because of course there is a problem of gender. We have seen yesterday the statistics provided by the host country about the gender gap in internet, and you are trying to make something concrete in your country. Can you explain how we are doing it in maximum 7 minutes if possible? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much to PNMA team and Giacomo. Yes, in Pakistan, as you have already explained, that you have moved towards more of the eastern side. So Pakistan is located in one of the most important socio-economic region of the South Asia. So here in Pakistan, we are having a huge population of 250 million. And we are currently reaching around 200 million because we are currently standing at 196 million mobile users in the country. So out of this population of 250 million, we, the women, are making 50% of the total population. But when it comes to the numbers of mobile usage, there we see that there is a huge gap, which is being explained through my slides. And if I'm allowed to share my screen, I'll be presenting you quickly through the digital gender inclusion strategy, which is one of the, you can say, the most implementing kind of strategy for reducing this gender gap, and for which the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority has taken lead to bring all the public and private stakeholders together and collaborate with each other to truly reduce the gap and create a difference in this regard. So I'll be sharing my screen and getting it over in 7 minutes, hopefully. So here we go. Yeah. So I'll be quickly taking you through the digital gender inclusion strategy which Pakistan Telecommunication Authority has developed to tackle with this very critical aspect of the telecommunication connectivity, which is equally important for men and women of the society to make a society digital as a whole. So for this holistic approach, we can see some of the legislative and policy environment which is already in place in Pakistan. But you can see starting from the Constitution of Pakistan and then moving towards the 2030 agenda, all of them are highlighting and creating an enabling environment for women. And with the recent Pakistan's 5 East framework, here we can see that along with the exports and e-Pakistan, energy, environment and climate change, we see that equity and empowerment is one of the government's focus area where we need to work together to make our women to play a role in digitalization of the country as a whole and for improvement of the socio-economic sector of the country. So when we talk in terms of the digital gender gap in Pakistan, here we see that we are improving on the numbers from 2022 to 2024. And starting with the mobile internet awareness, here we see that the gap was actually 30% in 2018, which has been reduced to 2% in 2024. That means that awareness is being created through some of the strategic steps which have been taken by all the stakeholders and duly initiated by the government sector itself. Then if we talk in terms of the mobile ownership, there we see that there is a huge gap, and that is actually because of the social norms of the country, where we see that males are usually taking over the responsibility of all the females to have their mobile or their SIM ownerships also. So, and while talking about the mobile internet users, here we also see that there is a gap of 38%, which is a huge gap, and we all are looking forward to reduce this gap as early as possible to allow the women of the country to play their roles for the digitalization of the countries. Then if we talk in terms of similarly the social media usage and branchless banking, there are also huge numbers which we are working together to improve this number. So if we talk in terms of the coverage gap, we can see that there are certain studies from GSMA as well, where coverage gap is being replaced by usage gap now. That most of the areas are already having the mobile broadband coverage, but the people are not using it for their benefit, and there are no usage of the internet in a meaningful manner. So if we see that around 38% of the global population that live within the footprint of the mobile broadband network, but they are not using it. So here we see that the 38% of this global population is usually a part of the global population which is female based, which is women. So to tackle with this whole issue, PTA has taken lead for developing a digital gender inclusion initiative, and we started with identifying the basic challenges which we had and generate some innovative ideas to bridge the digital divide, and then formulate a concrete plan with some specific actionable items for gender mainstreaming. As a telecom regulator, we decided to liaison with partner organizations to implement joint projects aimed at bridging the digital gender divide. So we hashtagged our aim with the name of Her Digital Pakistan, as we are all moving towards digitalization of the country, and yesterday there was a Digital Nation Bill which was already also passed in the country. So Her Digital Pakistan will focus more on the females' participation for the same. So as we collaborated with various stakeholders, initially there was a former Alliance for Affordable Internet, we had to react in a manner with the rights, education, access, content and targets which we had to meet for reducing this gender gap for usage of ICTs. Then we decided to collaborate and identify with some of the areas with the existing telecom operators, where Etisalat owned PTCL and Jazz, a WION-owned company, Zong, a China mobile company, Telenor Norway-based company, and then SEO. We joined hands with them for different project areas like basic digital skills, entrepreneurship trainings, and awareness campaigns, e-sehat and e-education, and some disability inclusion as well for including them also for the usage of telecom, and then financial inclusion and gender inclusion policies at company level. Online safety and security campaigns were also one of our main agenda. And then some digital ICT lab for females and enhancing the female subscriber base for mobile broadband usage. So internationally, we collaborated with some international organizations. We became a partner with International Telecommunication Union by pledging with Partner to Connect for the digital gender inclusion strategy development, which we delivered to ITU in the last working year, and its first implementation has already been started. Then GSM Association has been part of us, and we have developed a mobile internet skills training toolkit in our national language, which is Urdu, and that is being used to disseminate the information and awareness of the females in rural areas of the country. Then we partnered with Alliance for Affordable Internet for creating this sensitization as a process for all, including everybody around, and different government and private sectors. And then UNESCO, which was definitely our strategy building partner, and it supported us technically as well and financially for development of this strategy. And I'm sure that here is a website shot for you. This is a telecom regulator website, the Pakistan Telecommunication Authority. Here on the right end, you can see that on the main page, you'll find a link for gender inclusion and ICTs, and there are certain aspects. The strategy itself is available. Then there is a video clip which you can play and see about the digital initiatives and our international collaborations and how do we celebrate International Women's Day and the different press releases. This is just going to educate some of the regional countries who can also get some experience from our lessons, and they can also follow the same for their benefit. Then for International Women's Day, we usually follow the theme and create some different awareness campaigns and messages through social media and through print media, electronic media as well. We're coming about the digital gender inclusion strategy. The best part of this strategy is that we connect with all the public and private stakeholders, and we have brought some technical advisory bodies who are working internationally and globally. They are making an impact, a positive impact for helping such countries like us with which Pakistan is struggling for reducing the gender gap. The key pillars on which the strategy is based is affordability, improving digital skills, creating awareness, safety and security, access, and gender disaggregated data. And because all the themes and all the reports are based on the gender disaggregated data, which still remains a challenge from the supply side and demand side as well. Then understanding local context was very important for us while development of this strategy. We integrated gender perspective in policy initiatives and addressing key barriers. And the final approach, that was the collaboration with stakeholders, because we believe that without it, we cannot be able to manage a comprehensive or holistic approach. So to create this strategy, we adopted many themes like public perception surveys. We conducted the IVR surveys with the assistance of our telecom operators. We had then GSMA consumer survey as well. Multi-stakeholder workshops were conducted, expert interviews, and all these details are available on my website, from which you can have a look and get further details and insights. And there were certain online surveys as well. And after all the survey and development, we see that there were certain barriers and challenges. And one of the most important was the fear of the unknown, that is the safety and security concerns which the females had for using internet, and some of the male members of the society also had that it was not safe for the women to use internet and it could be some harmful for them. Then there was no positive awareness and positive perception about use of internet. And device and service affordability and gender disaggregated data, another challenge, digital literacy and local content, infrastructure and access, and patriarchal controls within the family, that women were not allowed to make use of internet and mobile services for their meaningful access, and lack of stakeholder collaboration. That was also one of the biggest challenge and barrier which was identified while after data collection. So in this strategy, we have developed a Pakistan Digital Gender Inclusion Forum, which gives a 3 years action plan and we have distributed the work in 6 working groups. Working group on research and data collection, a working group on affordability, working group on access of ICTs for women, working group on safety and security, then a working group on women's digital literacy and working group on inclusion. And they're led by the leading public organizations and duly supported by the private organizations, telecom sector, and international technical advisory bodies.
Thank you.
I am aware that we have very little of time, so there were certain key conclusions. You can quickly go through it. And I will come to the areas of collaboration, but for which we can see that for affordable connectivity, we need to look at the collaboration areas on which we can work together with the private sector and other bodies to make a positive and meaningful impact for the women to play their role. And thank you very much. You can find the strategy on PTA's website.
Thank you very much.
Stop sharing. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Sure. That's wonderful. And thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I tried to wrap it up a bit quickly, but it was a huge work. And so I took maybe...
we will propose you for the marathon at the Olympics, marathon in slide readings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saida, for that wonderful work that you guys are doing in closing the digital gap, particularly on the areas of gender. Now, we're going to move to Mr. Martin Sepa, Senior ICT Analyst, and also ICT Data and Analytical Division, that's from the ITU. And we also want to thank you also for the work ITU is doing across the globe to ensure that they close in this gap. And you are welcome, Mr. Sepa.
Thank you very much, and good morning, and thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure. I have slides that should be coming on, maybe.
Yes, can we get the slides for Mr. Martin?
So last year at this session at the IGF, I spoke about a product that we had started a few months before on promoting and measuring universal and meaningful connectivity. It really came into full swing this year, so I'm actually going to give you an update of that project. So, I have a bit of a problem because I cannot see my own slide. If you can see the next slide, please. They're not on the... Can they project it on the Zoom as well? And can I have the next slide, please? Okay. Yes. That one. Thank you. So we define universal and meaningful connectivity, the possibility for everyone to enjoy a safe, satisfying, enriching, productive online experience at an affordable cost. So meaningful for us is not what you do with it, but that you can use it whenever you want to for a reasonable price. So we already heard the importance of data, and that's basically also the core of the product, bringing the data to the policymakers and the other way around. Evidence is really crucial in all of this, and at the ITU we've been measuring basically ever since the existence of ITU, which is more than 150 years ago. So we have a long tradition of data and a lot of data. So I'm going to show you a few data from our publication, Facts and Figures, that came out less than a month ago. And now I lose them on the Zoom again. So it was mentioned by Doreen yesterday in the opening session, 5.5 million people are online, but 2.6 billion people are not using the internet yet, about 1/3 of the population. If we look at this region in the Arab states, it's a little bit around the global average. 70% of people are using, 30% are not, but the real gap, as you can see here, is in Africa, where only 38% of the population is online. And in most other regions, except for Asia, we're approaching already universal usage, especially Europe and Americas. Now, we also, this morning already it came up a little bit, the difference between the coverage cap and the usage cap. So the usage cap is people not using, the coverage cap is people not being able to even connect to a mobile network. So here we see it, and again they're gone on on the Zoom, so I have to turn around. We can see that, especially in the high-income countries, we are already at 84% of 5G. And then if you move to low-income countries, there's almost no 5G, and even half of the population doesn't have 4G yet. And even 20% of the population doesn't even have any mobile broadband network at all. So there's a big infrastructure gap, especially in the low-income countries, as we heard before as well. Affordability is also a very important barrier for people to go online. So even if the infrastructure is there, you need to spend some part of your monthly income to get a signal. And we can see that mobile is affordable in most regions of the world, being less than 1%, sometimes less than 2% of someone's monthly income, except in Africa, where it's 4%. Fixed broadband, on the other hand, even if there is a signal, in some regions of the world, it's completely unaffordable. 13% of one's income to spend on a fixed broadband connection, which may not even be that good, is of course a lot of money. So that's we have a lot of data. We also have data on the gender gap, on the urban-rural gap, on the age gap, on traffic. So there's a lot of other data, more data in our publications. I really encourage you to go there. So how do we bring this to the policymakers? Because data is crucial and policymakers need to be aware of the data, and policymakers also need to inform us, the statistician, which data we need. So to promote and measure universal and meaningful connectivity, we got funding from the EU, a 3 million euro global project for 3 years to promote and measure universal and meaningful connectivity. Officially it started on the 1st of May, but by the time we got everything in motion and we hired people to put it in place, we were a few months later. But in 2024, this year, we really have undertaken a lot of work. So there's basically 4 work streams leading to 4 outputs and eventually, hopefully, impacts. We have an advocacy work stream leading to an increased awareness of the whole concept. Data collection and dissemination, which is really what we do at the ITU. This is our bread and butter. Capacity building to enhance statistical capacity and also the awareness to measure UMC. And research, but eventually should lead to better policies for achieving UMC. So on the advocacy part, I mean, that's something I'm doing here at the moment. So to spread the word, go to all kind of events inside the UN, outside of the UN. We have our own World Telecom Indicator Symposium. There's a G20 and lots of other events. UMC is already mentioned in the UN Digital Global Compact. It's taken up by the G20, where there's now guidelines on measuring UMC, and then we are also active on social media, etc. Data collection and dissemination, as I said, this is really the heart of the work that we are doing, and that's also our strength. We developed a set of targets that are part of the UN Secretary General Roadmap for Digital Cooperation. We have our own website, but we also now have a dashboard where we have data on those targets for all countries in the world, where you can compare where your country is or how countries doing compared with each other, or how indicators doing compared with other indicators, etc. We have an online course on the collection and use of UMC indicators. Of course, this is also a capacity building part, a manual and price data, and we're starting to use secondary data sources, big data, etc., to support UMC measurement. The capacity building part, which is also an important part of the project, we're basically going to all the regions in the world, region by region, and there we bring together the users and the producers of the statistics from each of the countries of the region, so that at the end of the workshop there's a solid understanding of the concept of UMC, a greater awareness of the critical role of data in policy making, and the ability to advocate for investment in data infrastructure capabilities, eventually leading to an improved capacity to produce reliable data on UMC, which are then being used in the policy process of the countries. So we had workshops already in the Caribbean, here in the Arab States, and in the CIS region. As we speak, there's a workshop in Bangkok going on. Next year, we're going to Africa, both Francophone, Anglophone, the Pacific, and Latin America. And finally, research. In 2022, we had the Global Connectivity Report. And in the framework of the project, we're going to do another report every year for the next 3 years. So the next report, we're planning to bring it out probably somewhere in the second or the third quarter of 2025. And then also some smaller regional and thematic analysis. So really, this was in a nutshell the product and the data. That there's a wealth more. There's 2 links there on the slide. If you just Google ITU data, then you get on a website and you can find everything. So with that, I hand back to the moderator, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Martin. I remember for everybody that this project is already in our repository on the website and will be updated, so you will find all this precious information. As Vint was mentioning at the beginning, measuring is essential if we want to be sure that you are doing the right thing. So we have another set of tools that can help in this. The next experience will be about Latin America, so we shift from continent to another, we have a video of Mr. Oscar Leon, that is the Secretary General of CITEL, the telecommunication organization. Can I ask the regie, the control room, to send the video, please? Can we have the video of Mr. Leon from CITEL? And then, okay. No? Yeah. And then we will change a little bit the program because we are quite late, so we will try to make our best.
Hello, it is Oscar Leon, Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission, CITEL. We are proud to present this transformative initiative as a global best practice in using ICTs to improve lives and empower rural and underserved areas. Through initiative, policy reforms, and forward-thinking telecommunications regulations, CITEL has bridged the digital divide in Latin America and the Caribbean. Guided by 21 impactful OES General Assembly guidelines, the initiative includes tailored country diagnostics, strategic roadmaps, and an observatory to ensure effective implementation. By optimizing universal service funds, fostering public-private partnerships, eliminating regulatory barriers, and adopting innovative technologies, CITEL enhanced access to the internet, education, and essential services, driving social, economic, and cultural progress in vulnerable communities. These efforts showcase a powerful example of impactful and inclusive change deserving recognition. Give me a moment, I want to share my screen just to show you some details. Well, the digital inequality in Latin America and the Caribbean, exacerbated by outdated and inefficient regulatory policies, limits the economic, social, and educational development of the region, perpetuating inequities in key areas such as education, employment, and health. This is compounded by collateral issues such as high internet costs, lack of political interest, digital skills, and deficient infrastructure, which hinder the implementation of new technologies, the entry of new players, and aid in disconnected areas, limiting digital transformation. These 21 guidelines serve as blueprint for progress, encompassing in-depth diagnostics of country-specific needs, the development of strategic roadmaps with short, medium, and long-term objectives, and the establishment of a dedicated observatory to monitor and validate implementation. Key measures includes optimizing the use of universal service funds to enhance connectivity, fostering public-private partnerships to drive information, innovation, and investment, removing regulatory barriers that hinder access, and promoting the adoption of cutting-edge technologies. These actions directly improve the quality of life for rural populations, fostering their social, economic, and cultural well-being, and fundamentally transforming communities. Moreover, CITEL's Management Observatory plays a pivotal role in supervising and adapting the execution of projects, policies, and regulations. This ensures that efforts remain aligned to create equitable opportunities for access to the Internet, education, and essential services in the most vulnerable regions, effectively narrowing the digital gap and fostering inclusive development. The technical support provided by the CITEL Secretariat in Ecuador, the Dominican Republic, Panama, Colombia, Paraguay, and now in Bolivia, has generated significant progress, including the reform of laws and regulations to measure the impact of solutions and facilitate rural digital transformation projects, as well as the promotion of inclusive public policies that prioritize gender equity and essential services in rural or underserved areas. Additionally, the sharing of technological infrastructure has been encouraged to expand coverage and improve affordability, and community telecommunication networks have been promoted to reduce the digital divide. Furthermore, legal and regulatory frameworks have been updated to maximize social well-being, improve the quality of telecommunication services, and stimulate investment in remote areas. The actions taken have achieved greater social inclusion in rural or hard-to-reach areas, connecting communities through self-sustaining systems, which reduces the digital divide in the Americas. It has decreased forced migration by enabling local job creation, facilitated access to funds for new community networks, and promoted technological adoption with access to basic services. Additionally, public-private investment in telecommunication has been encouraged, improving quality of life, economic, social, and cultural development, as well as access to essential services such as health and education. Reducing the digital divide and connecting disconnected rural areas has required neutral technical support, focused on implementation of effective public policies and regulatory reforms in the short, medium, and long term. It has been essential to foster multi-sectoral collaboration among governments, private companies, NGOs, and local communities, developing sustainable business models and integrating flexible public policies that attract investment in telecommunications. Additionally, it has required a governmental commitment to modernize legal framework and make significant investment in infrastructure to drive inclusive and sustainable digital transformations.
Okay, thank you very much for this contribution. As you have seen, when we move to the regional scale, the problems are different, but also the solutions are different and can be possible. We have a concrete example there. We make a change of a schedule because we are running late. So I will give immediately the floor to our two remote moderators, Roberto and Judith. Could you tell us if there are questions from remote before to go to the room? And in the meantime, I ask people that in the room want to intervene to go to the podium over there in order to give them the floor, if any. Thank you. Judith, Roberto?
Hello? Yes. We don't necessarily have questions in the room, but there was one question we had here is that people were asking about is there any, let me just get the question, hold on a minute. They wanted to know about, let me just get, hold on. There's, yeah, what's the impact of, because as we have the digitalization, we have a reduction in corruption issues, and wanted to ask some questions about that because they wanted to see how that is factored into the discussions that we're having.
Okay, thank you. I don't see people in the room moving to the podium, so we can start. We cannot see very well because we have the light just in front of us. But, okay, so I think we can start.
No, we still have time. If there's anyone that would like to contribute with a question, we have, as Giacomo said, the two podiums to my left and
okay,
right.
but in the meantime, we can start to ask to answer to this question. I think that this is a question for Ms. Sieda, because is, in your experience as a regulator, the fact to move digital has improved to reduce the corruption has been useful? Transparency in procedures and digitalization? Thank you. Please.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Regarding the corruption aspect, we at Pakistan, we have obviously seen definite change in terms of digitalization in relation to the corruption, because as soon as the processes go online, there is very less room for making any manipulations or, any kind of things which could be more unclear and untransparent. And if I talk about one of the digital systems that Pakistan has recently introduced is the public procurement system, through which we buy everything online, whether it is the procurement of services, whether it is the procurement of goods. So all the services which are bought online, they have to pass through certain procedures through an automated system, which is called as electronic procurement and disposal system. And through this system, all the things are streamlined and automated. Nobody can make any changes in between. So we believe that making things automated or creating an online setup for the same, it not only expedites the process, but also adds transparency to the system. So this can definitely lead to a reduction in the corruption processes, which are no doubt there in every country. So this is how we feel as a regulator. And apart from that, we have already developed some online systems for procurement of for selling of licenses and issuance of licenses, and then some tower clearance procedures. They are also being automated in the country. So this makes the processes more efficient. They are concluded in a timely manner, and they have become more transparent. People are more aware about their application statuses. And apart from that, in a very near future, Pakistan is working on the right-of-way automation system also, and that will be creating a one-stop shop for the people who want to have right-of-way for the telecom infrastructure, and that can also reduce the hassles for procuring the right-of-way issues and such things. So automation and digitalization is definitely a catalyst for reducing corruption in itself. This is how we think about it as a regulator.
Thank you so much. We do have one other question, and this is from Omar Farouk. He says, considering the increasing use of biometric data for online verification, how can we ensure the security and privacy of young people's sensitive information, especially in countries with limited data protection laws? And what role does international policy frameworks play in setting global standards?
Okay, and we have a question from the floor, please.
Hear me? Yes.
You can go.
Thank you. This is Samo Grasic from ICTP Italy. I have a question about if you're actually collecting any metrics about the let's say, Starlink constellation and the provider that are providing now with the satellite. So, because my concern is that, you know, what I'm seeing is that more and more people, especially like living in remote areas, are actually depending on this constellation. And what concerns me is that there will be so many population actually relying on one commercial company. It's going to be basically providing the internet, and as well, if they decide to raise the price and this will not become affordable, what will the effects, especially in relation as governments might lose the interest to build a local infrastructure due to the very good and fast internet services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think that this question addressed to everybody, but specifically to government representative. Do you think that your Lithuanian experience, so I bring in the spot Ms. Lina from Lithuania, the representative of the government, you are dealing with these two issues.
Yes, thank you very much for the questions. They are really very good ones. From the government perspective, of course, government have to take a really active role in providing, well, both connectivity, but also meaningful access in terms of skills, in terms of programs, in terms of standards. From the Lithuanian government perspective, I have to say that in terms of physical infrastructure or connectivity, we really laid down a very strong foundation for digital inclusion. We have developed fiber broadband internet, which reaches 90% of households and 95% of population has access already to 5G. For the remote area, we used mobile internet solution, which really helps to connect people where fiber broadband could be difficult. However, coming back to standards and coming back to real challenges for meaningful access, I have to say that real challenge is equipping all citizens, and particularly vulnerable groups, with skills and confidence to navigate the digital world. And here we apply a number of measures. I don't know if I have another chance to talk about elderly people.
One moment. When we finish the question answer, I think that still we have another question. Mary, please.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. My name is Mary Uduma. I'm from Nigeria, and I belong to a group that is passionate about meaningful and community networks. We realize that in most countries and climes, the Universal Access Fund is being collected, and millions of dollars had been collected. I don't know whether there's an example, a use case example or experience on how to deploy this or activate these funds that are accumulated to be able to provide connectivity to the rural and the underserved. That's one bit. The second bit is which strategy works. Is it the commercial strategy of connecting the unconnected or the social strategy of connecting the unconnected? I would like any of you to share with us what has happened in your own environment, because our community needs digital justice. And if we are to provide digital justice for our people, we should look at, would the commercial strategy work? But the CITA used, I think CITA, or the last person that the video, they were talking about public-private partnership. Is it working better, or do we look at the social strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Can I ask Alaji, not as co-moderator, but as in his role of a member of the African Union Parliament? I think that this kind of problem that has been mentioned by the last two persons that intervened from the floor are your daily bread at the African Parliament. How you deal with that?
Yes, thank you very much. You are quite right, Madam Uduma. In fact, there are countries in Africa that are actually collecting the Universal Service Access Fund, but yet still they are unable to provide to the low income and also to the underprivileged. However, there are also countries that actually are using it. For example, for community networks. For example, when you go to Tanzania, they have very good examples on community networks. Now, the other question deals with the first person that asked the question about competition, for example. You realize that in most African countries now, governments actually are moving away from privately owning telecom companies. Now they are open up to the private sector, which means, for example, if you go to the Gambia, which is one of the smallest countries in Africa, you have 4 or 5 different telephone companies. The government actually has, but the private sector actually are more. Now, if you look at even the broadband that we provide, you will see that the majority of it is actually controlled by the private sector. And I think this trend is seen in Nigeria, is seen in Ghana, in South Africa. So governments actually are controlling less the telecom sector, but the private sector are coming more and more and more to control. And I think that is quite good in the sense that it's going to create competition, and it's also going to ensure that the prices actually are not, hogged by by only one company. So the more companies you have, the better the competition. And I think the trend going on now in Africa is that the private sector are getting more and more into the telecom sector and also in the provision of broadband, across the continent.
Thank you. We have another question in the floor, please.
No.
And then we close because we have the other speakers to go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone. Appreciate your efforts and wish you all the success. It's not a question, it's a suggestion. I'm Dr. Nermeen Salim, the Secretary General of Creators Union of Arab ECASIC Consultative Status. And as an expert in intellectual property, I suggest to include the intellectual property in the global measurements taken to include all in the digital environment. And we are, as an organization concerned with intellectual property, we have launched as a platform to protect intellectual property in the digital area. So I hope to include this idea in the global measurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this contribution. Yes, we count on your written contribution that will be included in the final report of the policy network. Thank you very much. So, we have to be very short, unfortunately. So, talent, can you bring one of the experience that could be interesting answering also to the question that we have listened till now? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Giacomo. Here I'm wearing my new hat of Policy Advocacy Advisor of GDIP, Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, and I'm really happy that the organization GDIP has participated actively in working for the Pakistan's gender digital transformation strategy. GDIP is currently working on an initiative called Women in Digital Economy Fund on closing the gender digital gap, and I'm very happy that yesterday at the plenary all of the speakers highlighted the importance of this issue. And one of the core areas for closing the gender digital divide and digital divide in general is access to relevant tools and products and content. And I'd like to bring one example of how we are providing access to weather tools, climate monitoring tools and data for rural communities using IoT LoRaWAN technologies in Central Asia. And just to give you a brief background, I come from Kyrgyzstan, which is a mountainous landlocked country in Central Asia, and it's part of what is called the third pole, largest water reserves outside of North and South poles. And if you look at the NASA statistics that they've been tracing for the since the 1950s, the biggest climate change has been happening in Central Asia. And what that means is the glaciers, which are storing all this fresh water, are melting rapidly. And this water feeds a quarter of the global population. At the same time, together with water shortage, there are increasing number of disasters happening. And to be able to monitor and to help populations, especially in rural areas, to be better prepared for disaster risks, we launched this project together with ISOC Foundation, Internet Society Kyrgyz chapter, and ICTP in Trieste to monitor climate using new technologies. And today in Kyrgyzstan, for example, there are only 80 weather stations for a population of 8 million. And that means that the accuracy of weather data, especially in the rural communities, is not very strong. And thus the communities may not be aware of potential disasters accumulating in the area. And this project that uses IoT, Internet of Things, sensors and LoRaWAN technology, communication technology that can send data to hundreds of kilometers theoretically if you have a clear line of sight, could help improve the situation. Using this technology, you can install these sensors high in the mountains to monitor glaciers or mountain lakes. You can install them in mud flow or flood potential areas. You can put them under the ground to monitor temperature of the soil and the moisture. You can put them in the water. So there are many uses, and we've been testing this technology in Central Asia, and we are really happy that this technology has proven to be viable. We tested them together with ordinary stations to see if the data correlates with the big weather stations. It actually does. Plus, you can have more uses for these sensors, not just for climate monitoring, but also for smart agriculture, wildlife monitoring. And here we have a colleague from Finland, Samo, who is also doing this kind of projects in Finland, monitoring deers. And this brings me to conclusion of my presentation is the next steps. So we'd like to be able to also monitor wildlife. And you know, it's in Central Asia we have snow leopards, so we'd like to use for that. And as for the reindeer, you know, the New Year holidays are coming up, and Santa Claus, if we believe in Santa, should be able to deliver all the goods to the children. And the scientists from, I think, Sweden decided that Santa should be located in Kyrgyzstan to be able to deliver the gifts to all the children in the world. And there is a mountain peak in Kyrgyzstan called Peak Dankova, from which it's the longest line of sight in the world, 550 kilometers into a mountain peak in China called Hindutak. And last year we've been discussing with Professor Slim and other colleagues at ICTP that we should be able to establish a link between these two peaks and see if science and these technologies are indeed possible to connect this kind of locations. And these are some of the next steps for our project. Other application that we are planning to do is using all this data that these weather stations will collect and apply machine learning. There is a concept called tiny machine learning, which could help us to monitor and potentially forecast disaster risks. So this is quickly, very briefly about this project, but I'll be happy to expand more later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sultan. Thank you very much, Talan Sultanov. We move to Lina Viltrakini, Ambassador at Large for Economic and Digital Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Lithuania. You can have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And in my first intervention, I referred already to the role of the government in bridging gaps, bridging digital gaps. And I would like to focus a little bit on the digital skills for the elderly, how to ensure digital inclusion of the elderly people. And here the government has to allocate some. Well, from Lithuanian experience, I can share that the government has to allocate specific resources for this purpose. In our case, we recently just invested 2 million euros for specifically to improve the digital skills of socially vulnerable groups, and in particular elderly people and residents of remote residential areas. The government has to set clear tasks, clear targets. For example, in Lithuania, by 2030, we aim to equip 80% of adults with the skills to perform everyday digital tasks. And also by the same year, we provide 100 of key public services online in a public sector. So with these ambitious tasks, indeed, the governments alone cannot achieve them, so we need to involve all the society. We need to involve other public institutions, academic institutions, private sector, civil society, and I would like to share with you one example from Lithuania. We have such an initiative called No One Left Behind, which was launched more than a year ago by the Communications Regulatory Authority of Lithuania, and it particularly focuses on improving digital skills among seniors. And well, as I'm lacking time, so I will be very brief, just presenting that with this initiative, we managed to grow a very robust public and private partnership. That answers the question that was raised from the floor. In our case, it involves more than 140 collaborators, including state authorities, private sector, municipalities, media, and others. And we call this initiative now All Lithuania's Project. And the main results of this project are that during 1 year, seminars were held at 18 third-age universities, remote seminars reaching rural areas through digital platforms like Senior Worlds or Zoom. We established partnerships with 33 municipalities who were supporting by providing facilities to the elderly people. The initiative trained 3,500 seniors and 1,500 school children, addressing different issues, including like cyber threats and fraud prevention. And that is very important because that also builds confidence of these people on digital world. And well, 40 municipalities involved, broadcasters, and so on and so on. And further on, next year we plan to expand this project and also train other vulnerable groups such as jobless and socially isolated people. And well, perhaps as a last remark is that I would like to mention that it's very, very important for all the projects, for all the stakeholders involved in bridging the gaps to be close to those with whom you are working. So be as close as possible, be it libraries in the case of Lithuania, be it postal offices. In the case of Kenya, where we have a project of our company working on providing trainings and skills to elderly people there, be it banks like in Estonia or any other places, community hubs, which are very close to those in need.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to see that what you say is very near to what Mary from Nigeria was saying. So we need to build through communities. And in order to reach the communities, our last speaker is Bobby Bedi. There is a question of identity, cultural identity. You can build the communities, keep the communities around their identities. And audiovisual media are an important way to build this identity feelings. What is your experience? What are you doing in this?
Thank you very much. I think being the last person to speak gives you the chance of being a disruptor, and I was going to show you some beautiful pictures of the work that I'm doing in the region, but I think given the time, this is better just to say what I have to say. See, the main thing is, let's look at the two words we've been discussing, meaningful and access. I think the most meaningful is an adjective. Access is the main word, and the reason that we have access, frankly, is because the world is obsessed with engagement and entertainment. The reason we have internet, the reason for the existence of internet is of the intense desire of humanity to engage and entertain. I don't necessarily mean entertainment in terms of, dancing and singing. It's any intertwining of people, any mixing of people as entertainment. Now, I'm in the business of telling stories. I think the internet exists because people like to tell stories and listen to stories. That's why people subscribe, and we thrive on each other's stories. And whenever we have a moment, we use it to engage and entertain. So, for me, the four words follow in that order: engage, entertain, inform, educate. It's very difficult to just jump to the last two. That's the process. That's why the guard outside my house, that's why the child working with my working help, my friends, everybody has internet. It's because of those reasons. Now that we have it, what can we do with it? And that's the first part of the word, which is meaningful. And there I can tell you that in India, where we have 1 billion, almost a billion people who have internet access, is a percentage, it is still not the largest in the world or anything, but a billion people is a billion people. It's connections. Half of them are urban, half of them are rural. All of them access the internet. Most of them do it through a smartphone. And all of them use it to engage and entertain. But in this process, what has happened is, whether it is crop prices, whether it's market, whether it's weather conditions, whether it is health, whether it is COVID regulation, all of it is the benefit that you're getting. And just recently, Delhi has had a huge air pollution problem. Every single school shifted to doing classes on, and there was children doing their classes on the phone. And you know what? It was working. It was something new had happened, and they were actually sitting in their uniforms, in their little rooms, and actually attending class. So, for me, it's very important to keep focusing on this aspect of engagement and people meeting and talking to each other, and then all of the agencies and the government and all of them take advantage and then are able to make it more meaningful in many ways. But there again, I think that even that is meaningful. Even the emotional support that it gives you, even the social support that it gives you, makes it meaningful. It's not just medical meaningfulness or weather or anything. All these things are meaningful. Now, I'll just come to the last bit, which is what I'm doing in this region. Now, this, especially the country that we're in, Saudi Arabia, entertainment is in reality 2 years old. I mean, it started 5-6 years ago with the opening up of entertainment. But then COVID came, etc. And then, so it's really 2 to 3 years old. It's already, in terms of cinemas, this is 60% of the Arab box office. That was the hunger you saw. Now here what we are doing is we are trying to bridge a very major time gap. We are bringing the old fables, the mystical stories. We are bringing in Shakespeare, relocating it in situations where it is relevant in Jeddah, like setting Macbeth in a Jeddah story, etc. We are bringing these stories to them so that they engage with each other. And if they engage, you use the form, you use the connection to educate, to inform, to improve their health, to improve their mental balance, and all of that. And I think it's a relationship that we need to nurture and keep between the entertainment and the meaningfulness of it. So I think really the last thing is that for the internet to be meaningful, it needs to all encompass and it needs to engage first, it needs to entertain first. It will inform and educate. And then lastly also, let's not forget the role of advertising, which none of us really like, but it funds the entire process. And it makes a lot of what we're trying to do possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. We have to go to a close, so Alajid.
Yeah, thank you very much for that wonderful conversation. We are really running out of time, and I will suggest my co-facilitator, we give them maybe 30 seconds each to see really what we need to do generally, because I think Mr. Seva has given very, very good data. And this is very important in what we do nowadays. And again, we have seen the linkage with the university, public university, working with the private to be able to provide. So we want to give you each maybe 30 seconds just to give us in very clear and straightforward term, what do you think we need to do to help, close this gap, to shrink it, so that the underprivileged can actually be connected?
Yes, thank you. So I think from my perspective and hearing all what has been said during this panel, clearly there is an opportunity to establish strong collaboration between private for investment and managing this project, public to sector to facilitate regulation, but also academia, universities to bring innovation and research and try to make this technology more affordable and more accessible.
Thank you. Data is absolutely critical and crucial, especially on socioeconomic backgrounds to measure all the digital divides. Unfortunately, we don't have enough data, so it's very, very important that countries around the world invest in data capabilities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sieda is still with us online. If she wants to say 30 seconds, if not, we will go to a close because we are already late. So thank you very much for being with us. You have listened to 8 different models to make meaningful the access, from the entertainment to talking with the families, to teaching to the elder, to protect life through early warning system, through university cooperation with the territory, and through statistical measures in order to know what exactly to do. So I thank you everybody for being with us, so patient, and sorry for the next session that we are taking some time to them, but I think that was a passionate travel around the globe to understand how we can better behave for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Once again, we want to also thank our consultant, Daphne, on this very important program, because he worked day and night to ensure she put the team together and also she put all the documentations. So we want to thank her very much, and also thank the audience, as well as our co-facilitators, Zambrana and Linda. Thank you all very, 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 very much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.